Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lebenspraxis Podcast, where we talk about everything that is connected to the idea of the Lebenspraxis. And the Lebenspraxis idea is that you live your life with the senses open, connected to what surrounds you, to the world around you, the people around you, and that you stay a constant learner exploring this world. I haven't recorded an episode in a little bit. I'm not sure how long ago, but I definitely took a summer break from any content creation. So I didn't do any YouTube videos in the last weeks. I didn't write a newsletter for 2 months, maybe even 3 months. And that was because we had lots of workshops now in the summer that all needed lots of time to prepare, and we had our regular coaching happening and so on. And it was just not enough time to also create content, because not just that content obviously takes time to create, but also the creative energy that you need for it is not always available when you put all your focus into delivering our work, where people come to Berlin from all over Europe or even further away to learn from us. And then I also had my yearly Fontainebleau holiday with my family, and that was very nice, spending time there in the forest and climbing and camping. I'm definitely not shouting around in this episode because I'm at home, it's in the evening and my kids are asleep, but it anyway fits the style of this podcast, which is a little bit more on the calmer side, I would say. Today I want to talk with you about things concerning people that are working alone, that are working self-employed alone, people that could be called solopreneurs, so people that are starting their own business, but they're working either solo or they work Han Solo, which means they maybe work with one Chewbacca, but that's it. Okay, let's imagine the following thing. You are a young person that has very little obligations, you could say, in life. Like you don't have kids, your parents are still not in the age where you have to take care of them. So you have a lot of available time. You are young, you have little capital or money, you want to start your own business. So what it means is that you will probably try to do lots of things by yourself because you don't have the money to pay people to do all sorts of work for you. The thing is, if you start your own business, there will be all sorts of things that need to be done. So there is a huge difference between someone that really is, in that sense, an entrepreneur. I have no idea why in English they don't have a Germanic word for this, just this French word. So there is a difference between an entrepreneur and someone that is self-employed. I think you can think about the self-employed and solopreneur person as someone that is somewhere on a scale of how much they go into the business side of things. And let's take this as an example. One guy that has a skill and wants to work self-employed, but he just wants to work with this skill. That's everything that person wants to do. So let's say a carpenter. You're a carpenter and you want to, instead of being employed by someone, employ yourself. The problem starts when you say, okay, the only thing I want to do is to work as a carpenter. The moment you go in that sense spiritually, the next step, and call yourself a solopreneur, which I would say like from the mindset is a little bit different, that moment a significant amount of time from what you're doing will not be carpentry. So for everyone that says, okay, I just want to do carpentry, nothing else, you have basically 2 options. You can get employed by someone, or if you are the employer, you need to employ other people or work with freelancers that help you to do all the stuff that you don't want to do. The thing is, if you are in the beginning, let's say again, you are very young, you're 20, 25, something like this, you start your own business and you start maybe also in a business that takes time to build up. It's not that after 2 months you already have lots and lots of bookings and so on. You first need to make your connections and you need to build it up gradually. Then, as I said, you will not have the money, you will probably have the time. Now the question is, are you open to do all sorts of other things? And this is where this meets the ideas of the Lebenspraxis, to have a vast skill set, because that's something that the solopreneur needs when he's still, especially when he's still working in his craft, or when he wants to work in his or her craft, but doing the business side as well. Because someone that is leading a bigger enterprise, but they come from an actual craft, like being a carpenter, for example, if they start to grow a business to a size where they have several employees and so on, it's very likely they will actually not do any carpentry anymore. Yeah, but they will lead the business. That's sort of the sad side of someone leading and growing a business. And of course, there are people that still keep doing their craft and employ people to do the other things. But there's always the side of it that when you have a business with several people, then you will need to lead them. And that will take energy, that will take time, and that will always take away from doing your craft. So that's for everyone that thinks about becoming self-employed, starting a business, something to recognize that this will most likely lead to you having either less time doing your craft, or the time that you work will increase, like mathematically. Obviously, there's no other way in that. Okay, let's change from the carpentry example to an example that many people will relate to, because many trainers, physiotherapists, therapists of all sorts, of all kinds are listening, and I have trained many of those people, and many of those are also going into the path of self-employment, or a half thing. They are employed somewhere, but they also do some self-employment work. And so for all of you, it will make a lot of sense to look into other skills than just training people. And that will be, for example, finances, and they are obviously taxes, something that is more or less done for you if you are employed, or you can get help for free. At least in Germany, it's like this, that if you're employed, you have these clubs where they help you for free. Whereas when you are self-employed, you will either have to pay someone to get help, or you will need to figure things out by yourself through the resources that are available, because obviously all the laws about taxes are available for free. So you will need to look into how does finances work, and you need to somehow tell people that you are there, that you exist. So obviously it's very nice if it's just word of mouth. You don't have to do anything. Yeah, you have your first client and it's a friend of you that you just ask, hey, do you want to do training? Yes. Okay, this person tells someone else and blah, 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 blah. That's ideal, but it's unlikely this will happen in a way that brings enough business to you. It's very likely you will need to do some sort of marketing. So now the question is, how do you do that? And there are many different possibilities, but you need to somehow do something. So you need to know things about marketing. And that is like all these different endeavors that you will need to look at when you are self-employed. Things that need a lifetime to master. Maybe taxes don't need a lifetime to master, but things like marketing is something where you can get the basics quickly, like the absolute basics, like what possibilities exist and so on. But to master it will take a lifetime. So the question is always, how much are we going into these things? How much money do we spend learning about marketing? There are lots of free resources. There are lots of low pay resources like books and audiobooks and courses, but there's also things that cost much more money, like a mentorship with someone that knows a lot about marketing and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then obviously the other path would be to outsource that, to give that to someone else. But our thought experiment at the moment is that we are doing things ourselves and we want to spend only little money because we are very at the start and we don't have any money. As nowadays, things work a lot through the internet, and if you're a trainer, for example, Instagram is very popular. So it makes sense to know the basics of content creation. And there are basically, I would say, 5 parts of content creation. So there's video, there's photo, there's audio, there's written, and then maybe let's call it design. So there can be animations, that can be icons, can be drawn things, this sort of stuff. So that's 5 different things. And then you can obviously look into all these 5 different things, which I have done. And the least amount of time I've spent in this design side of things, like drawings, animations, icons, and so on, is something I'm becoming more interested at the moment. But what I spend a lot of time at is especially video and especially writing, but also photo and audio. Obviously audio, because I'm recording this podcast, is something I've looked at, and it's something that I've looked into enough to do all these things by myself. So I don't need for any of this someone from outside, although the part of design I'm currently giving to other people in most of the things. Yeah, so on the one hand, Mariana does a lot of that, but also we have some outside help for our YouTube thumbnails, for example, which is maybe a classic example of this part of content creation, where you need to create this sort of image to help people to decide to click on your video. Content creation is a big thing. Content creation has become a big topic in marketing. In a sense, when you market yourself, you do some sort of this stuff that I just talked about, no? Like if you do marketing, you will use any of these ways or mediums that I just talked about. Like you will use images, or you will use language, and then you will put this into certain containers, moving or not moving, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so you need to have the technical skills of the container that you're using. For example, if it's video, like how do I operate a camera, but then obviously also how do I frame a picture and how do I cut and so on and so forth. And then you need to be also able to perform in front of the camera. You need to know how to hold a pen and how to write, but you need to also know how to write something nice. Yeah, so there's many things to it, and you have maybe something that you get more drawn to, that is your starting point. But it got to a point where it's often not enough if you have just one skill. If you're in this solopreneur world, if you can just write, or if you can just make photos, it doesn't work so well. It's better if you have at least 2 things that you can combine, like design and video, or photo and text, or audio and video, or whatever. Yeah, it can be all sorts of combinations. Or you look into all of them. But obviously that's not something that is so realistic to do in the beginning. So somewhere you need to start. And all of these 5 are relevant. Not everyone needs to use all 5, obviously, but in general, all 5 are relevant. Another thing is that you will need to have a website if you have a business. So you need to create a website. That used to be much more difficult than nowadays, because nowadays you have these whois generators, like what you see is what you get. And you can just build your website, and you can use all sorts of templates. And first we had WordPress. We had also things before, obviously, but WordPress then really took over this thing where you don't need to know any code anymore. But then it got to the next step where we really can drag things around in an editor and really change how things look. And it's not just that someone else coded a design and we are just using this design and just am able to change a few things. That it used to be like that. Now you can really build things from scratch, and you don't need to know any code. And actually many web designers are not coding anymore. I would even guess that many web designers just know the basics of writing code, and they do everything with this, what you see is what you get, editors, which means you can also do that. You can also do that yourself. So it takes a lot of time to create a nice website. That's why a nice website is expensive. It will cost you several thousands of euros, and obviously big companies are paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of euros for the website. But as a solopreneur, if you get someone that is very good at the craft, it will cost you a few thousand euros to get a very nice website. Yeah, and you will need to create content for this. You will need to have photos or design stuff. You will need to have text, obviously, maybe a video, blah, 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 blah. So to fill a website, that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of money that you can pour into it. So what can you do yourself? In a sense, you can do, of course, everything yourself. The question is, again, what do you use your time for, what do you use your money for, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, you don't need to know how to code anymore to write a website. If you can code, it's nice. So I consider myself actually lucky that I learned the basics of code in school, which I think is pretty common to learn that. I'm not 100% sure, but I learned the basics there. And my website is actually not built in such a creator, such a what you see is what you get creator. With the help of a few other people, I just wrote all the code. So not that I wrote all the code, but many snippets are from other people, but I understand all the code. And just in the last week and this week, I poured a lot of time into my website because I learned some new things about CSS, some things that I didn't understand before, something that is also not super new, but it came like 5-6 years ago. I didn't know it exists, these possibilities. My skills were like still in the past. And it was an interesting thing because I wanted to change my website. I wanted to change some particular things. And then I asked a web designer that has helped me with my website for many years already. Like always when I have a problem, like he's one of the guys that I ask. And yeah, I asked for a solution. Then I realized, oh, now there's actually web designer helper available for everyone all the time. That is called ChatGPT. And I went to ChatGPT and asked it for a solution, for a code solution for what I wanted. And it gave me a solution that worked. But he told me, actually, your website is not really up to date anymore in how it's done nowadays in CSS. So you could look into these new things. And I looked into these new things. I watched some videos about it and then started to restructure my website with this. As I'm recording this, I have restructured the main sites, like the front page and the page about our online coaching, page about our certification, at least the English one. The German one I still have to do as of this recording. But it was interesting because I didn't realize the possibilities that I had doing it myself. I already thought, okay, I need a designer to help me with that because I don't know how to do that in the way that I want. And just this short sentence of this friend of mine that told me, hey, maybe it's interesting for you to look into this, which I really directly did. And it started to suddenly I spent 3 days on the computer, 10 hours every day to learn this new skill, work on my website. I'm very happy with all the changes that I made, that I could make them myself, that I didn't have to transition to what you see is what you get editor, because I'm still the owner of all this code. I know everything. I can change things around there. I don't have to pay any monthly fee somewhere and so on. I like it. And I like this old school writing code because I like the artistic thing about it, that it's not what you see is what you get, but you write these commands and then you have to see how does it look then. I think it's it's art form, not to degrade the what you see is what you get stuff. This is obviously also a very beautiful thing, but I definitely feel a connection to this old school style of doing web design. And when it comes to something like code, then it's really amazing what helper like ChatGPT can do. So I used that heavily in the last week and also this week when I still worked on it. And it's really like to have an advanced web designer, the advanced coder sitting next to you that you can always ask, and he gives you examples and gives you solutions and tells you why is it like this, and you can give the code and ask, hey, is this code correct, and so on. There's really a huge game changer for people that want to work alone on that thing, because now you always have someone to ask that is giving really good answers. Not every answer is perfectly usable, obviously, and you have the problem that ChatGPT has. You always have to provide it with the information. You cannot just enter your whole website code, the combination of all these different things that are working together, like your CSS sheet and a JavaScript document and an HTML and so on and so forth. So you always have to manually give it the information, and it has a sort of a limit of the information that it can deal with. But it's really amazing what the possibilities that this is giving you to work alone. And these possibilities have gone up in the last years in all sorts of things that are connected to digital stuff. Like making videos, photos, audio, blah, 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 blah. Like the possibility to do this alone is way higher than, let's say, 30 years ago. How, like, remember back 30 years ago when we had computers with 100 megahertz processors, how would it have been to cut something on this because you didn't even have digital video making. You had your camera with, still non-digital camera and blah, 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 blah. Like, this was a complete different world, and that things got digitalized, and then with the onset of artificial intelligence and so on and so forth, like, it's really a big help for people that want to do things alone. Just a short reminder that I also made more critical episode about AI, ChatGPT, and what it all means. But for certain things like this, I think it's beautiful, like it's wonderful. It's a wonderful tool for that. Okay, the thing is now that obviously you will not have a fire burning for all these different things. There will probably be things where you say, hey, I'm actually excited to also do that. And other things where you feel, this is really far from what I want to do. Maybe you like maybe you like mathematical things and you actually like to work with the finances, but to make a photo is really not your art form, or vice versa. You love to make videos and cutting, but to do things like finance is really nothing that you are interested in. So let's imagine you're starting out, you have some money that you can use for freelancing services. So then you would obviously think about, okay, what are the things that I will really do badly because I don't care about this stuff? This you give to someone else. And then the things where you feel, hey, I'm actually excited to do this you will do by yourself. And the thing is, as I said, if you're excited about something, you can learn the basics fast. Then you just continue every week, every month to go further into it, to learn the next step. And again, here the possibilities of the internet are great. And also, of course, to have a vast network of people that can help you to bring you to the right direction. Like my friend that told me, hey, look into this. Or, for example, I learned the basics of how to use a camera, like a proper camera, not the phone. Like how does aperture work, shutter speed, ISO, and so on, this stuff. By someone that was in my training, and he said, hey, Josef, okay, I heard that you want to look a bit more into these things. And if you want, we can sit down for coffee and I can explain it to you. And he gave me a 20-minute explanation of how this stuff basically work. And from there, I went. From there, I experimented with a camera that we had at home and used this for several months until I bought the camera that I'm using now for several years, and that I'm still exploring how to use it better and better and better. With every video, I would say, especially this year again, I aim to get better at my skill with video making. But there are other skills where I have always given that to other people. But now, years later, I start to become more interested in them. For example, compared to video, the photos that I took were really bad. And now for the last year or so, or for the last maybe 2 years, I started to make more and more photos, especially of my family, of my kids, and so on. And from there, got to the point where here and there I can snap a nice photo at a workshop, at a training that is usable for the website or for social media. Because before that, there was really not a skill that I was good for. Now I'm at a level that is like okay. And some photos that I took are even, I would say, good enough to print them out and put them at the wall, and at least to have a nice memory. It looks definitely good enough. The problem that you will have as someone that is burning for what they do, when you work with freelancers, they will obviously not have the same fire burning for your business as you as the business owner. When you don't have a lot of money to spare, you will obviously not have enough money to hire the top of their fields when you're just 22 years old. So you need to get some help from someone, but you need to really have your eyes open to get something good for what you're paying. Because if you don't have a lot of money, the likelihood that what you receive will not be very good is also very high. So you have to be very attentive about that, because it can actually be better to spend 10 hours learning the basics of the craft, and you will maybe get something better out of it. So sometimes it can be better to invest 10 hours by yourself learning the basics of your skill and doing something yourself than hiring a freelancer that is actually not doing such a great work for the little bit of money that you have when you start out. And then there's a lot of back and forth and blah, blah, blah. And in the end, you also invest a lot of time just communicating and so on. Like, there are obviously skills where this is not so easy, where it takes much longer, but there are skills that you can get to a decent usable skill level in very short time. 2 examples for this. Let's say you need to write copy for your products. So you need to write advertisement stuff, and you can already write. So you already have a foot in the door, but you just don't know how to word things well and so on and so forth. So you spend 10 hours and then you will be able to write texts that are sort of okay. And then maybe you're already at a level where you can write your own copy and you don't need to hire someone. A different example is that I hired a freelancer to compose the music for my podcast intro, because there was clearly something that I couldn't do myself, although my father used to be a composer, so I know a few basic things about what to click in Logic on the Mac to do this and that, because this I did as a child. But I have no idea how to compose something well. This is something that takes years and years and years. After 10 hours, you will not be at a decent state. Like, the learning curve is much, much steeper compared to writing a copy text. This is my claim, yeah? So people disagree and want to tell me it's different. I'm very open for your comments. But here it was clear for me, okay, this I will not do alone. I will take, I don't know what I paid, like not much, like 100 euros or something like this, a little bit more, I think. And I got this short podcast intro music, which I'm happy with. I told the guy what I wanted. Perfect. So there was a nice hiring of a freelancer that worked well, especially because this was something I couldn't solve myself. So I was also definitely not having the feeling that I sometimes have when I work with freelancers that, okay, I could have done this myself as well because I have skills in that as well. Yeah, so for example, cutting videos, it's a little bit more difficult to impress me because this is something I spend quite a bit of hours doing this myself, and I definitely know more about this craft than composing music. The problem is that you need to have some sort of feedback, and either it needs to be by yourself about the work that you do yourself, or better, also other people. Because it can be that you think the stuff that you're doing is good, but actually it's very, very bad. Yeah, you write a copy text and it's actually very bad. You make photos that are actually very bad. You make videos that are actually very bad. You do your taxes, but actually there's many things that you forget where you pay more to the government than you need to. So it's good to get feedback. And either you have your own feedback systems very well developed. That means you can compare your work to the work of other people and you see, okay, if I read my copy text, that doesn't really work. Like if I compare to others, or okay, my photo is like, that's not, yeah. Okay, it's better than the photos that my grandmother is doing, but they're definitely not worthy to show in the internet for now. So I need to practice. And that's always crucial to be able to give yourself feedback. But I'm always asking other people also, hey, what do you think about this video? Hey, what do you think about how I changed my website? And so on and so forth. That is so crucial, because if you don't do it, you might end up with something where you think it's good, but it's actually not working. And I've seen many people where this is the case, where I think, okay, this person didn't get enough outside feedback and is unable to give feedback to him or herself, and the work is just not the level it could be. And if that's the case, then it's obviously better to hire professionals that do better work than you. So this path that I'm outlining, to do things yourself, to do quite a few things yourself, is only really usable for the people that are excellent in observing their own work, that are excellent in receiving feedback and taking this feedback and improving on it. this is an inquiry also into having no ego, in being able to step out, looking at things from the outside. And when someone is criticizing your work and giving you feedback, to examine this feedback, look at this feedback, look what can you use from it, and then to improve with that. Obviously, not all feedback that you will receive will be usable. I have received a lot of feedback that was unusable because it was just a feedback of taste. And then if it's about taste, you need to really see, is this a sort of general underlying taste that many people have? Or is this a general taste of my audience? Or is this just a taste of one person and the next person will say something completely different? But with every feedback I receive, I'm thinking about it and I'm not forgetting it. Even if I don't change something, I keep it in the back of my head that someone has said this and that it might be usable at some point. Please notice when I use this judgmental language of saying something is bad, something is good, what I mean with it, that something is working or something is not working. So obviously there's objective things where you can say something is objectively working or objectively not working. Yeah, like if you want to build a business, if you do things good, it means you can stay in business. If you do things bad, your business will fail. So yes, there are good and bad things here. I'm saying this because one important part of what I talk about with people is to examine comparison, a judgmentalness, and see when this makes sense and when this doesn't make sense. Because in general, people are too much comparing themselves to other people and are judging too much, thousands of times during the day, when this is unnecessary. And one important step for your own personal development is for most people to compare less, to judge less, just to see the things without comparison. Okay, let's sum it up. So if you are just starting out, you're young, you have no money, but you have a lot of time, then I want you to understand that there are many skills that you can learn fast. There are skills that you cannot learn fast that have a very steep learning curve. And there is much cheaper to get someone to do that for you, to get a freelancer to do that. But there are skills where it will be even crucial to learn how to do them, because you will need them very often and it will be too expensive in the beginning. And it will be also difficult to have someone available to do that all the time. That's also a thing, yeah? Not just to have the money, but also to find someone that can do that. And that is also often not so easy, especially if you want quality work. There are many freelancers, but there are also many freelancers that are not so great, actually. And what is easy and what is difficult to learn will be based, of course, a lot about the skill on the one hand, but of course, where are you coming from? What do you already know? What skills do you already have? And for what do you burn? For what do you have fire? What are you interested in? What are you excited about? Many of the side skills, if you're an entrepreneur, are at the computer. Not all of them, by far not all of them. Because, for example, one big skill of someone that is building a business is communication skill. Many of these communication skills can happen at the computer. For example, if you write emails or if you create online content. But you will also need to talk with people on the phone and people that are in front of you. If you're a bad communicator, it's not a very good thing for leading a business. And that's why for many people then it can be better to be employed. Because if they don't want to talk, they will have a problem. Your ability to communicate, your skill in communication will determine if you fail at a business or not. Of course, that's not the only thing. Of course, the quality of your product is crucial as well, but you can have the best product in the world. If no one knows about it, if you cannot communicate that, then you will have a problem. And actually one of the greatest poets of Germany was exactly suffering from that. Friedrich Schiller, who wrote this amazing plays, but when he was reading it to people, he couldn't read that properly. He couldn't communicate that well. So people didn't realize how good it was. Then it needed other people to read it out to theater owners or whatever, however it was done back then, to pitch a new play to someone, I don't know. But other people needed to do that. So then people realized, wow, this is really great. And then it became a big success and a big thing. Yeah. So almost one of the greatest poets of Germany failed because he was unable to communicate his work to the people that were the gatekeepers for bringing that onto the stage. And good communication skills have a lot to do with confidence. So that will be something you have to work on. Your confidence to communicate your stuff. Being a solopreneur, entrepreneur, self-employed, blah, blah, blah. You need to work on yourself. Coming back to the computer thing that I just said. If you're good with computers, it helps. If you're not afraid from a computer, it helps. If you use the computer as something that can scale your productivity, then you're using it correctly. And there's so many things that can help. Because the computer is an automation machine. It's nowadays also an intelligence machine with artificial intelligence. And if you use these things well, it can save you many, many, many hours per month. And it can save you a lot of money. If you're willing to do a lot of stuff by yourself, you can. You will need to examine what is realistic to do. Where can you create good quality, where not. But the things that you're able to do by yourself without the help of another human, this seems to increase. And now that AI went to the next level and is currently like getting better and better, your opportunities to do things alone without the need of paying someone else is increasing. And with everything, there are two sides about that, of course, but it's definitely an opportunity for people that have little financial possibilities to be independent of someone that is employing them, to be independent of banks, and to start things by themselves. And I think that's a nice thing, definitely. And as the final word, I want to say that I like people that are doing their own things because there's always this fire in it. And as a final thing in this podcast episode, I want to say how much I like when people are doing their own thing, because then they have skin in the game, which will often lead to a much different approach than many people that are employed. For me, it's very regular in a store, in a restaurant, or also on the campsite in Fontainebleau where we camped, that I feel, wow, if that person that I'm just communicating with would be the owner of this business, I'm sure he would do, or she would do things very differently, because he would have skin in the game and he would probably treat me different than this employee that couldn't care less, or at least thinks he or she couldn't care less about if I'm coming back or not, if I buy something or not. And for me personally, this world of most people being employed, I feel is a little bit problematic, because it's exactly this falling half asleep when they work, because the skin in the game is lacking. And it's really so often that I go into a store and I think, if I would own the store and I would see this employee working like that, then this would be their last day working here. And that sounds very hard and maybe not necessarily what you know from my side, but I really cannot stand it if people are approaching things like without fire, without love, without depth. And I see it so often, and it's nice if it's different. For example, there's one place where I sometimes buy meat, and it's a very special butcher. It's like a bit of a premium experience there. And every time I go in there, I always feel like, wow, this is a different thing here. They know how to treat people, and it feels like they really care. And every time I'm there, I always feel like I want to go back there. I want to come back and buy again. And for the solopreneur, this customer experience is something he or she needs to work on all the time, because otherwise you will be out of business quickly. And it's something I work on all the time, and that I try to improve, that I reflect on regularly, and that Marianne and me have very regular talks about like what is the right approach here, how can we do that better, and so on and so forth. Alright, my dear practitioners, let me know if you have any thoughts. Send them to me via email or comment on the YouTube video of this podcast. For me, your comments are always very important and fruitful. And if you have any wishes for topics that I should cover in this podcast, let me know and I see what I can do. Alright, until next time, and as always, continue.